Welcome to our webinar. My name is Savannah Sly, and I am the President of the Board of Directors for SWAP USA, and this webinar today is about Prop 60. It's a condoms in porn ballot initiative in California, and today you're going to be learning about what it is, how it's affecting people in the porn industry, and what you can do to support sex workers in California around this initiative. So we have a variety of people here to help present on this issue today. We have some folks from the Free Speech Coalition. I'm going to introduce them real quick. We have Eric, who is the Executive Director of the Free Speech Coalition. We have Susie Q, who is the Director of Policy and Industry Relations for the Free Speech Coalition. We also have Ella Darling, who is a porn performer and an advocate. We have Karen, who is a legal consultant for the Free Speech Coalition. And also on the line, we have Catherine Koster, who's the Communications Director for SWAP USA. Catherine's going to be behind the scenes, running this webinar and helping to moderate. So there's a lot of great materials that the Free Speech Coalition has sent to us to kind of educate us preemptively for this webinar. And Susie and Eric, I know that you're going to be taking us through all of these materials. You have a lot of endorsement letters, you have some media to share, you've got some slideshows. So I guess I'm just going to pass it on to you guys now, and I'll ask questions as they come up. And Susie, it sounds like you are muted right now.
I think I'm unmuted now.
There you go.
So, hi everyone. First of all, Savannah and SWAP, thank you so much for taking the time out of your days and out of your roster of activism and things that need to be addressed within the sex worker rights movement to talk with us about Prop 60, as we really do. We're very concerned about it, as both myself, as a performer who's still working in the industry, but also as advocates within the industry for its workers and for everyone. Prop 60 is a classic, I think, tale. I think anyone who's been in the sex worker rights movement and dealing with policy and legislation for any point of time can recognize this tactic. It's a Trojan horse tactic, pun very much intended, regardless of what you think about condoms in the adult industry. Some are being used definitely within certain sectors of the adult industry. Regardless of where you stand on that issue, Prop 60 is bad for workers in that it puts folks at risk of harassment, and that's via uninsurable lawsuits. Prop 60 is incentivized harassment. It's enforcing a regulation through incentivized harassment of an already marginalized workforce. So I wanted for sure to bring this to the attention of the Sex Worker Outreach Project, as y'all are really an important key player in this movement, and having you guys on board and having voters and activists informed about this issue is really crucial, I think, to winning and making sure that everyone can stay safe. So thank you for having us, and I'm going to introduce the rest of our team before I dive into to the presentation and the PowerPoint that I put together for you. I'd love, Eric, can I introduce you? Or are you? Okay, good. So Eric is muted right now, I think, but I think we can unmute him.
Hello.
I'd love to introduce Eric Paul Loya, our Executive Director. Eric?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining today. I will let Susie lead the charge. Don't worry that I'm looking this way. Our offices are right next to each other. So, hi. It's really important that to sort of further that unity that we have within the movement. There's a lot of things where there's crossroads, and we want to make sure that everybody is sort of up to date and understands what we're struggling with here and how that will stand in our way to further decriminalize sex work in the future. And therefore we're incredibly grateful to be able to have this conversation with you as leaders in the community, and to get your input and hopefully to work together with you on many great and exciting things to move forward our little society. So thank you for joining.
And then I also want to introduce a member of the Free Speech Coalition team, Karen, if I could hop her in the spotlight for a second. Karen Tynan is an incredible resource to not only this fight, but to our industry at large. She's a hardcore ally and a huge inspiration of mine. So she puts in a lot of work for the Free Speech Coalition. Karen Tynan.
Thank you very much.
So any legalese questions, there is a really a component of Prop 60 that duels very intensely with legalese, and so I've asked Karen to hop on board to help, put into lay terms some of that stuff that's a little more complicated. And then I'd like to introduce Ella Darling, there she is, who is the current vice president of the Adult Performer Advocacy Committee, and has worked so tirelessly with us on the Prop 60 campaign, has been instrumental, especially when we went and talked to the California Democrats at their executive board meeting. Her testimony really, I think, got us that endorsement. So Ella Darling, everyone.
I'm actually the secretary of.
You're the secretary? I'm the worst. Yeah. I apologize.
That's
You're
okay.
running for president, though, right?
Yes, I'm running unopposed for president, so I don't want to sound cocky, but I think I'm probably going to get it.
So yes, of course, as a board member of the Adult Performer Advocacy Committee, I've actually asked Ella here because it's important to have, I think everyone in SWAP knows that, when we talk about regulating an industry, it's important to have the perspective of the people whose bodies will be regulated upon. So I can speak to that, but Ella is in leadership for that organization that speaks for that contingency. So she is here today too. So, without further ado, I'm going to dive into a little presentation I put together for you all on the nuts and bolts of Prop 60 and a breakdown of why we really believe it's bad for sex workers and bad for California. So I'm going to share my screen with you all. Here we go. And go back up here and play.
It's like magic.
It is like magic. It's called science. And basically magic. All right, so this, by the way, we don't have a ton of money. You all know that grassroots organizing is all about blood, sweat, and tears. So, and volunteerism. And this logo, I just want to point out, the harassment is not a California value button was designed by an independent producer and performer and photographer that is very near and dear to my heart, Isabel Dressler, who shot some amazing people within our movement. So through volunteerism, she made this incredible design and has been, everything that has happened in the Prop 60 campaign has really come from this grassroots level, and I think that's an important piece to remember, especially when we're up against so much money from the proponents of Prop 60. So here are some materials. We have been hard at work at the Free Speech Coalition, who are one of the main sponsors of Californians Against Worker Harassment, the political action committee founded to fight.
Pardon me, Susie, I hate to interrupt you, but I saw for a moment, I saw some images from your screen flash on mine, and then it went black. It seems like some people can see your screen and maybe some can't.
Okay.
Just wanted to check in with some folks because I don't want to miss these lovely infographics that you've put together for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's back. I can see it. Performer liability.
Oh, there we go.
Can you see that now, Ella? Great. All right, Susie, tell us all about it.
Good. Californians Against Worker Harassment. Okay. So we have been hard at work, even before this initiative was titled Prop 60, when it was just the Adult Film Initiative. We were gaining support for our opposition across the board, from California Democrats, Libertarians, Senator Mark Leno, the California Republican Party, of all people, are with us in opposition to this misguided initiative. HIV organizations, LGBT organizations, business organizations. It's hard enough to get Libertarians, Democrats, and Republicans, and HIV organizations, and LGBT organizations, and worker organizations to agree on anything, let alone porn. So we're very, very grateful for the opposition and coalition that we've been able to build thus far. These are some of the materials that we presented at these different events, the California GOP meeting, the California Executive Board meeting, VICA meetings, APAC meetings. We really believe and want people to understand that incentivized harassment by any resident of California is really a non-starter when we talk about a marginalized workforce that already faces alarming rates of violence, discrimination, stalkers, murder. I mean, SWAP is a key partner. I know I've been to several December 17th we wouldn't call them celebrations, but demonstrations and events every year where we read the names of people who have lost their lives due to sex worker stigma. And the reason we are terrified about Prop 60 is that it will incentivize harassment and give any California resident potential access to legal names and home addresses of people who work in the adult industry. And that's just a non-starter, especially right now. So here are some of the materials that we have given to people in order to get them to understand the key talking points, and we'll dive into each of these points a little bit further. So, performer liability. This harassment piece of Prop 60, the Adult Film Initiative, is really what concerns us. Now, the proponents of this initiative will say that performers are not liable, and it says within the language of the initiative that performers are not liable. However, any performer who has a financial interest in a non-compliant adult film will be held liable. What the proponents of this initiative don't understand, and perhaps Ella Darling can speak a little bit more to this, about the reality of what being an adult film performer means these days. Gone are the days of just showing up to set, receiving your check, and going home. In order to be a viable, active, successful performer, these performers have financial interest in many ways, be it content sharing, clips, affiliate programs, and many performers who are producing their own content in order to survive. I really don't think that people understand that we are working class small business owners, and due to that fact, due to the way the economy and the business works these days, we do have a financial interest in the films that we make and that we are involved in, and therefore under Prop 60 we will be held liable. Moreover, what's very bizarre about Prop 60, even though it purports to be a health and safety initiative, there's no exemption for an injured worker. Now that's just counterintuitive, right? Injured workers are not exempt, so even if a worker who was hurt on the job, even they could be sued and harassed. And that just doesn't make any sense, and it shows Prop 60's true colors, because this is not about performer health and safety. This is about incentivized harassment and dismantling our industry and going after our workforce. So this lawsuit process, and I may ask Karen for a little bit of help here breaking this down, and we can...
slide on, because I'm still showing the second slide.
Okay. Let's see. We may have to like go...
I think that there are some issues perhaps with the amount of memory that all of these various screens that we have up are sending. It seems like people on our live stream are not able to see the slideshow that you're presenting, but I want to let people know Swap USA will be hosting all of this content, all the images that you may or may not be seeing on our website after this webinar. So we will make links available to make sure that everybody can see these infographics.
Okay, great. Well, I will press on, and please feel free to stop me if, you know, especially for folks who aren't seeing the infographic part of it. Are some of you seeing it, though, the lawsuit process slide I have pulled up right now?
Yes, I can see it. I just noticed when I log onto the live stream on YouTube, I can't see it.
Gotcha.
But we'll make sure that the folder that you sent me with all the images is accompanying this webinar when we archive it and spread it around.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
Cool. So currently, many of you may be familiar with the California Occupational Safety and Health Administration, Cal-OSHA, which is charged with regulating health and safety in workplaces in California. Now, currently, any resident of California may file a claim with Cal-OSHA to pursue alleged violations. Now, there are two things that can happen once this claim is filed. Either Cal-OSHA supports the claim and takes administrative action via fines and proceedings, or Cal-OSHA takes no action and, you know, moves on. Either they decide that there was no, there was no violation in place, or it expires. A number of things can happen. But if they take no action, then that resident who filed the claim under Prop 60 could still file a lawsuit against that performer or worker, anyone, remember, with a financial interest. So what Prop 60 does is it takes control away both from workers as well as the regulatory body tasked with protecting workers, and it puts that in the hands of both courts and vigilantes, and that's the part that's most disturbing about this. Of course, you know, and I think why we see Republicans in opposition to this. You know, no one likes frivolous lawsuits or you know, putting legislation in the hands of the courts. But moreover, from a social justice perspective, it is not okay to put vigilante justice in the hands of anyone who has a problem with the way that we do our jobs, because we know, as of right now, there's still a lot of people on this earth who have a major problem with what we do for a living. So Prop 60 would empower those people, and that's why it has to be stopped. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Hopefully some of you will be able to see it. Karen, would you like to add anything about the lawsuit process that's important for folks to keep in mind?
The one thing I'd like to piggyback on, Susie, that you said is that really for about $450 anybody can file a lawsuit, and it can be anyone from an anti-pornography activist to Michael Weinstein to, you know, a fan, a stalker. As we know, fan is short for fanatic. And there have been situations where performers and workers have needed assistance in rebuffing people. And so if you think of it as only costing $450 to start this process, it's a bit scary because that's not a lot of money, and it certainly is an amount of money that Michael Weinstein or a fanatic would use to harass a performer. Thanks, Susie.
Thank you, Karen. And to remind everyone, Michael Weinstein is the proponent of this initiative. It's his name that is on the petition, and AIDS Healthcare Foundation, this is not the first time they have put together legislation like this. Some of you may remember AB 1576 a couple years ago, Measure B. This is the next in a long line of attacks on the adult industry at the hands of Michael Weinstein and AIDS Healthcare Foundation. So exactly as Karen just pointed out, LGBT workers and people across the board are really concerned that this would empower folks to harass them for whatever reason. You know, not using, you know, if there can be an initiative wrapped in the guise of health and safety and condom legislation, then there can very easily be a lawsuit personalized, wrapped in health and safety and condom legislation that is actually going after someone to try to hurt them and harass them. So here are just some of the voices of folks in the industry who are speaking up. Like I said, we do not have the deep pockets of the proponents of this initiative, but what we do have is each other. And I know that sounds a little cheesy, but I never shy away from good cheese. And you know, this industry really is a family, and we watch out for our own, and people are really understanding that this puts our family at risk. And though we may not have those funds in place, we do have social media followings. We are producers of content. We make images and we make people look at them. And so people are using their leverage of their fans and their followings to speak out against Prop 60, and that's an exciting thing to see. So you know, and it's across the board, everything from, you know, independent transgender performers and producers to Axel Braun, who is one of the top directors in the industry. He's directed, you know, the Star Wars XXX parody, and he just did Suicide Squad, and he is directed for Wicked and Vivid, who have, and some are currently still only producing condom-only movies. And he pointed out in a tweet that I think went out today or over the weekend. He says, "I direct condom-only movies and still I don't support Prop 60. Ask yourself why." I think that's really important to drive home the point that Prop 60 is not about condoms. It's about harassment, and it's about lawsuits, and it puts our industry and our workers at risk. And so even people who make that choice to only shoot with barrier protection, who potentially even be in compliance with this, they wouldn't, because unless it's in every single frame, the way the law is written, it sets us up to fail. It sets us up to be harassed. And so even producers who shoot with condoms are against it. Ella, I wondered, I'm going to switch to the APAC opposition letter, and I was hoping you would talk a little bit more about why APAC and you yourself as an individual performer are so against Prop 60 and why it scares you.
Absolutely. So there is a definite issue with performer safety with this initiative. As Susie mentioned earlier, the days of being able to just go to set, perform, go home with a check, and call it a day, those are far gone. Those are over. these days, in order to have longevity in your career, you have to be industrious. You have to go above and beyond the call of performing. You have to produce clips for distribution sites, for your website. You have to webcam, often with your partner. Sometimes even married couples would be forced to use condoms in this initiative. We make money on the back end of films using affiliate codes. We have a financial stake and a production stake in a lot of content. And the really big companies aren't the ones that are going to suffer the most. The people who are going to suffer the most are the small independent companies that we start ourselves so that we can extend our reach of our career. The AHF tried to write this allegedly in such a way that would protect performers. There's a phrase in it that is supposed to protect performers, but because they don't understand the real day-to-day life of performers, they don't understand that we are financial stakeholders and we are producers. I would say about 75% of APAC membership, and APAC membership comprises about, I would say around half the active performer base. So around 75% of that are producers themselves of content. So we would absolutely be liable here. And I can give you a personal anecdote. There's some guy, I don't know where he lives, I don't know what his name is, but he calls my mother at work to tell her that I'm a lesbian whore who is bringing shame to the family. He harasses my mother. He was able to do this simply with gaining access to my legal name. Now, if they were able to file these lawsuits against us, even if they didn't win, in that process, they would gain access to our legal names and our home addresses, because that is information that is divulged in court. Imagine if that person could gain access to my home address. I get rape threats. I get death threats. I've had people threaten to slit my throat and kill my dog. Imagine if those people only had to pay the ticket price of $450 to gain access to my private life. That terrifies me. And it terrifies me for myself, but it also terrifies me for my contemporaries in the industry. Because we don't have the amount of money that people think we do. People think that porn stars are very well off. And the fact is, this is primarily a middle-class job. There are certainly stars that make a lot of money, but for the most part, the average porn worker is just kind of getting by. We don't have the money for security. We don't have the money to live in buildings that have a concierge that will keep strangers out. We are very vulnerable as a population. We're marginalized, often multi-marginalized people. And if this passes, the performer base will absolutely be at risk.
Thank you so much, Ella. Ella was there and gave a similar testimony the day that we asked to meet with the AIDS Healthcare Foundation and Michael Weinstein, the proponents of Prop 60. We invited them to a press conference at the Andes Hotel, which is blocks from their headquarters. Ella spoke, we waited, and they did not come, they did not respond, they did not email. So it's very disheartening to see again and again an organization that purports to want to help us shut us out, ignore our pleas, and not have a conversation with us. Thank you, Ella, for the work that you do and that you've done, and for educating us all on that. So that's where APAC stands on this, and this is their opposition letter that was, filed way back in May. Other allies that don't have as much of a stake, the Adult Performer Advocacy Committee is the folks who this will actually affect, but San Francisco AIDS Foundation, AIDS Project Los Angeles, Equality California, the Los Angeles LGBT Center, here are some of the things that they've said. They've echoed the fears of the folks that this initiative will actually affect, saying that it will not protect adult film performers. It will drive the industry underground or to places that offer few protections for workers, poses a serious threat to physical safety and well-being of all adult workers in this industry, which is already stigmatized. The people see Equality California even said it will exacerbate the very problem it purports to address. People are with us. People understand that this is super, super dangerous. I think, and here's the growing list of folks who have come out in opposition to Prop 60. We've recently added. Pardon me?
This is Catherine. Could you please take the PowerPoint off of full screen? I'm wondering if that is why it's showing up as black. I don't know if you have it as a, yeah, we can see it now.
Is that better? Awesome.
Yeah,
Cool,
so just
cool.
keep it like that. Don't go to present because that has happened in past webinars too. So thank you.
Gotcha.
Continue onward.
How about that? Is that weird?
It's perfect. It looks great.
Perfect. Now we can see it on YouTube also.
Cool.
Hooray.
Here's
Thanks, Catherine.
Good work. Here, I'll catch everybody up. Things that you may not have seen. Ta-da! There's all the tweets.
Beautiful. Ooh. Lovely. Graphics.
And here's our allied group, some of them anyway. Here's the final slide with the full list of folks who oppose Prop 60 currently. We've recently added the Friends Committee of Legislation of California, which are Quakers. A Quaker group is with us, which is very exciting. The Transgender Law Center. I believe who was the other new one? Equality California, of course. So that list is growing every day. Even folks like Senator Mark Leno, elected officials who have gone out on a limb and said, yeah, no, I understand this population, even though you may not. But I stand with them. And that more than anything, regardless of Prop 60, gives me so much hope and is so exciting that it's almost something to celebrate even in the midst of this really annoying and terrifying battle. So in conclusion, Prop 60 will enforce the criminalization of the adult industry through incentivized harassment of an already marginalized workforce. It's misguided, it's poorly drafted, and it's dangerous. It cannot stand. It gets us further away from full decriminalization of the adult industry, of anyone who exchanges sexual services for money. And that's not what we're about. So we hope that you will join us in this fight. Consider joining our coalition of allies in combating this harmful piece of legislation, as harassment is not a California value. So please vote no on Prop 60 on November 8th. Thank you. Ta-da! So I'm going to leave this up for a little bit, but I will happily start to take questions now. Eric or Karen or Ella, if you have anything you would like to add before we start taking questions, I think now would be a great time to do that too.
Well, I would like to touch on the point that the proponent of this bill, Michael Weinstein, he would be given a position in California government that is absolutely unprecedented. And he would also essentially be given a blank check to enforce, in whatever way he sees fit, this law at the expense of California taxpayers. It's incredibly expensive. It's frivolously expensive. And to remove him from this position, I believe it takes 2 legislative votes, is essentially the impeachment process, which is something that's reserved for constitutional officers. Isn't that right, Susie?
Yeah, 2/3 majority to get Michael Weinstein out of office. This Prop 60 would give Michael Weinstein a job, regulating and going after people who violated the regulations. And yeah, he would essentially be unimpeachable. It would take, knowing how hard the process of getting opposition for a controversial topic has been, especially during an election year, getting a 2/3 majority in both houses to impeach someone is a task that it would be intense and very difficult to accomplish. And also it's a waste of time. Like, people are dying. That's what makes me so livid about Prop 60. It's, if you want to help the adult industry, why don't you ask us what we need, and we can absolutely tell you, because there are plenty of things that sex workers need, and this is not one of them. So that would be a big blow. Prop 60 would be a big blow, and that Michael Weinstein, a non-elected position, would be a huge issue to try and mitigate in the face of it. Thank you for bringing that up.
And Susie, if I could add on to what Ella said about how these lawsuits would work, it's that it could be Michael Weinstein versus Ella Darling and Jim Bob, because they did a clip together. And for part of the clip, you couldn't see a condom. Part of the clip you could, part of the clip you couldn't. And so in that lawsuit, the way they've written the presumptions in this proposition, it would probably, I'd say, cost us between $30,000 and $50,000 just to defend this lawsuit, just to try to prevent Ella from having to be found liable. And here's the other part of that. The way these presumptions are written, it gives whoever brings these lawsuits tremendous advantage over the individual workers, the individual performers. And these are average working people that don't have the resources. I represent performers, production companies, talent agencies, and I would certainly not expect Ella Darling to come into my office and drop me a $30,000 check along with a copy of a lawsuit, right? It's very difficult for regular working folk to do. And that part of it, the financial leverage, is very disturbing to me. I feel like it is a regulation that's meant to really punish these workers and subjugate them and force them with the condom measures. There's permitting requirements in this law. Ella would have to go get a permit prior to a scene, any scene. And so she's got to march herself down, present herself as an adult film worker, and get a permit in a Cal OSHA office prior to a scene. These kind of ridiculous regulations are part of Prop 60.
And I think they set a really dangerous precedent. You know, if Prop 60 goes through, as we move forward towards decriminalization of this entire sex industry, this is the type of legislation that we see in legal models of sex work that oppress workers in other ways. And I think that setting this kind of precedence right now is really dangerous.
I absolutely agree, Susie. This is Savannah speaking. And porn being one of our regulated forms of sex work, this does set a really scary precedent. So it's really great to be working with you on spreading the news around this.
Yes.
With SWAP USA, we are confronted with many ways in which sex work and the sex worker rights movement is discredited. Sometimes through soft facts, sometimes through fiction, sometimes through complete stereotyping. Are there, I would love to hear some about what some of the arguments are that are being made for people who are pro Prop 60 as how this might protect sex workers in porn. Could you give me some sound bites or some talking points as to what you would say to somebody who is pro Prop 60?
Absolutely. Here, I'm going to take my screen sharing back so I can look at you guys in the face. Hold on. Go.
I see you.
Oh wait, no. Now I'm sharing Ella's face. That's not what I wanted to do. Ella time 2.
Yeah.
There we go. Hi. So the Yes Prop 60 campaign is all, for people who have been working on sex work legislation and activism for a couple years, will find a lot of their tactics very familiar. It's all about worker safety and
oh, looks like we just lost some people. Are we still live?
I think we are still live, yeah.
All right.
Coming back.
They will log back on. Sorry, everybody.
And I have a huge favor for all of the presenters. When you're not presenting, can you please turn off your camera? Because I think that takes up a lot of memory and then sometimes, leads people to be kicked off. So that would help. Thank you. Now it's all to you. Please continue, Susie.
Susie, who is currently muted.
Oh no. Okay. So why are you muted? There you go. And you're still muted.
There we go. I think I'm good. Can you guys hear me and see me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. So the Yes Prop 60 campaign will seem familiar to some of you folks who may have been dealing with rescue organizations that want to help sex workers for a number of years. It's a classic case of the exact same tactics. So health and safety, we have to go in and help these workers because obviously there is a problem. I think that the AIDS Healthcare Foundation really does see that there's a problem of STI and HIV transmission in the adult industry. But that's not the case. And if they worked with us and were actually familiar with the realities of what's been going on in the adult industry, I think they'd see that. I think that people don't realize that within the past 12 years, there has not been a single onset transmission of HIV in the adult industry, whereas in the general population, in that decade plus, we've seen over 500,000 transmissions of HIV. It's very plain that the adult industry has self-regulated to be leaders in sexual health and STI prevention. And yet, we're seen as needing to be rescued, as an outside source needing to come in and provide rules for us, whereas we've been following our own rules for over a decade now successfully. And so I think that what I would say to someone who was pro Prop 60 is why aren't you working with us? Why are you working against us? Like, what do you know about the PASS system, which is the system that we utilize to test every 14 days for 7 different STIs to keep performer privacy sacred so that we don't have HIPAA violations, so folks' medical records are not in the hands of a million different people. They are safe and secure. What do you, I would answer that question with a question, is what do you know about the adult industry? Who are you working with in partnership to improve regulations and keep people safer? Or are you just throwing money at a ballot initiative that makes you look good because you're cleaning up the sex industry? Answer me that, sir, is probably what I would say. But yeah, the Yes Prop 60 campaign is classic rescue industry, and it stinks, in my opinion. Other questions? Are folks still there?
Yeah, we're here. Just to play devil's advocate.
Which I know was good, but I was like, everyone's still there.
I'm here, and just to play devil's advocate and to keep asking some questions, Susie. Some people that I've talked to have brought up that a yes on Prop 60 would enable performers to better advocate for their own protection at work, assuming that now performers don't have the leverage that they need to be protected on set, that perhaps they will be denied jobs if they choose to wear condoms on set and the like. What would you say to people who are yes on Prop 60 for that kind of reason?
Well, always I would love to hear about people's experiences with that. You know, if people encounter different forms of harassment in the industry, I mean, the Free Speech Coalition and the Adult Performer Advocacy Committee are there for that exact purpose. The Model Bill of Rights and the Code of Ethics, developed by the Free Speech Coalition and developed by the Adult Performer Advocacy Committee, are really important, and they protect that right of choice. That is one of the key tenets in those two documents. Ella, I would love for you to maybe talk a little bit more about the Adult Performer Advocacy Bill of Rights, which is posted in many locations when folks go on to set, and talent testing offices, in our office. And I think that speaks to some of those concerns about how are people protected when they are at work. And I would say to someone who thinks that Prop 60 is the way to go about that, well, what are you doing? Have you worked with the Adult Performer Advocacy Committee? Are you familiar with the Model Bill of Rights and the Code of Ethics? Do you think that adequately has protected people? Why or why not? You know, it's a much more complicated issue, and I think that those of us in the sex worker rights movement understand that criminalization and fines and legislation in that respect, punitive, is not the way to keep people safe. Finding people, suing people, and throwing them in jail is never the way to, I think, keep people safe. So that's my argument there. Eric or Ella or Karen, would you like to add anything to that?
I just wanted to say that actually the Performer Bill of Rights and the Code of Conduct was specifically developed by APAC. FSC as a trade association was not part of that development, and one of the first things that we did beginning of this year when I came on board with FSC, we actually asked APAC whether we would be allowed to endorse it and put it on our website, and also make our members, all of our production members, talent agents, distributors, affiliates, whoever is a member of FSC, sign on to those Bill of Rights, just to make sure that they are A, informed, and B, also can be held accountable if there is something going on. And we have had conversations with producers where performers felt that they were trying to make a choice and they weren't allowed to make that choice, or that they couldn't make that choice. And we sort of tried and helped alleviate those mostly misunderstandings on how something needs to go. And I think that's a far more in-depth conversation that the industry needs to have and that we're more than willing to have. It's just dangerous when these kind of things are being put on a ballot for all residents in California to vote on that have very little knowledge of how the industry works, how sex work works. And a lot of it is founded in prejudice and misconceptions that were sort of handed down the line through the cultures that we were raised in. And as such, Prop 60 is a huge danger by allowing that majority to decide over those reproductive rights of a minority. Because when we talk about sexual health, we really need to talk beyond condoms. We need to talk about those testing protocols that have worked for 12 years. We need to talk about different modalities and options that are out there now and that are going to keep coming and are going to keep developing and increasing. And I think it would be to our detriment to exclude those. And obviously, it's Healthcare Foundation who's very actively rallying against anything other than condoms. And my background is public health, so I'm happy to answer any questions on that scope. It's very sad to see. I mean, we have, for example, I don't know if I didn't hear that come up, but the Los Angeles County HIV Commission, on which I'm a part of, actually took a vote to oppose Prop 60 and also took a vote to oppose AB 1576. And the way that works is that as a planning body for LA County, they go and then recommend those positions to the Board of Supervisors because they say, here's the problems that has in comparison to good public health policy. And as such, I think there's such a swelling of organizations and people that say this is not the way to go, and to basically criminalize condomless intercourse that way is the direct opposite of what we need to do if we want to bring people into the fold and empower them to make informed decisions for themselves. So that's what I would like to add.
Absolutely. And Ella, do you have anything to add? Go to you.
Yes. So the APAC membership is pretty clear on what they want. They want to have the option to choose the best method of protection for themselves. For much of the mainstream part of the industry, we want to be able to rely on the testing protocol that has protected us for 12 years. We haven't had a single incidence of HIV transmission on a set that follows that protocol for the past 12 years. For the gay part of the industry, they want to be able to continue to use condoms and to continue to perform in the way that they've performed. They have a much different culture around HIV than the mainstream industry does, and they want to be able to continue to do the things that have worked for them to keep them safe. We assert and we stand by the idea that our testing protocol is an equitable measure of safety to condoms, and that PrEP and Truvada, these are things that are also an equitable measure of safety to prevent HIV. We don't want to be forced to use condoms and only ever use condoms and testing. We want to be able to choose the measure that works best for us, because we and many health organizations stand by this as well. We believe that there are several options that offer equitable measures of safety against HIV and against infection. And different people have different choices and different ideas of what works for them. Everybody's body is different, everybody's work is different, everybody's cultural background is different. And so it's important that we understand that the various parts of the industry have protocols that work for them and that are scientifically respected to protect them.
I think that it's important to point out, and Eric was starting to touch on this, but one thing that's very troubling about Prop 60 and the proponents of it is that they do not have this comprehensive idea of STI prevention and sexual health. The proponents have railed against increasing access to important HIV prevention methods such as PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, Truvada, and I think that in and of itself is a big red flag. People who are turning their back on science and the wave of the future of how we protect ourselves from HIV and eradicate it from the world, people who are living in the dark ages are not who should be drafting legislation on safer sex in the adult industry. So I think that's an important thing to point out as well. Though PrEP is not part of Prop 60, I think it's really important that we advocate for people to have all of the options in the prevention toolkit available to them. And Prop 60 will limit that option to one, and that's just not okay. Other questions from folks?
I have a question, Susie.
All right, Savannah, sock it to me.
I'm so upset about Prop 60. I don't live in California, otherwise I would just vote against it. Is there anything that I can do to help support people in the porn industry in California when this comes up on the ballot in November? What can we do to try and stop this?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking. So it's really important that folks realize that even though this is a California proposition, it affects all of us. Do not believe that AIDS Healthcare Foundation will stop in California. Other states such as Florida, Nevada, Vermont could be next. So it's very important that we talk about this and spread the word. Follow our Twitter, FSC Army, is where a lot of the news and up-to-date progress around the Prop 60 fight is happening. Follow the hashtag NoProp60 and get involved there. And then also, we have a fabulous template that one of the performers, Julia Ann, put together over the weekend. So if you are a social media activist that shows your face or shows whatever, consider changing your avatar to this, spreading the word. We don't have those the deep pockets of AIDS Healthcare Foundation, but we have each other. We have quite a media reach. And I think that when we stand united, we are pretty much unstoppable. So if we all work together on this, I feel very confident that we can see no Prop 60 happen for real in November. So please, please spread the word.
And then I have a quick question. So if you guys could sort of sum up in maybe each of you a paragraph or a few sentences about what you are most concerned about regarding Prop 60, just as sort of talking points for people to leave with, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do we want to? Maybe we can. Yeah. Let's start with you, Susie.
For sure. And I'm happy to put together. We're about to relaunch our Don't Harass CA website with some really quick templates for talking point templates for folks to use on social media. But the thing that I'm most concerned about is this piece here on this last slide is Prop 60 will enforce the criminalization of the adult industry through incentivized harassment of an already marginalized workforce. It's misguided, it's poorly drafted, and it's dangerous. And I think that also it's important to let the getting to be staggering list of our allies in coalition that are against Prop 60 also speak for themselves. Can you name another issue that is opposed by Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, LGBT organizations, HIV organizations, and commerce organizations? Like, just one other. Think of another one. Like, you can't, So I think that that's a really important point to drive home, that this is bringing people together and is therefore kind of speaks for itself. But I can also happily put together a list of talking points to put throughout the SWAP chapters for folks who do want to get involved and be kind of like social media soldiers. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. And then I see Karen has I'm going to go to you next, Karen, and then Eric, and then Ella. That sounds good.
Great.
And what I'd like to remind people about this regulation is that it's very similar to how state legislators have tried to legislate abortion clinics. And they write regulations and say it's about the patient safety, it's about the safety of women. We know that it's not. It really is about preventing abortions and making abortions more difficult and affecting women's reproductive rights. If you look at how Prop 60 is written, it is written to have a very permeable effect into the workforce and prevent people from doing this type of work, prevent people from pursuing a livelihood in the name of quote-unquote worker safety. It's not about worker safety. It's about being able to harass, being able to fine you, and being able to find out all your private information and have that kind of leverage on you. I think that the analogy to abortion clinic regulations is a bit of a hot button analogy, but I'll stick with it.
Wonderful. And then Eric, if you can.
Well, I think here's one of the things that I'm most concerned about, and this comes from the heart, is that we have fought so validly for so long to not have things like this stand in our way. And what we see here is an initiative that couldn't have been drafted better by the folks that want to oppose anybody that is proud of their sexuality, their gender identity, or who they are as a person. And what we will have through Prop 60, should Prop 60 pass, I will be the first person to urge everybody that is in the sex industry to leave this state. Because what we will have is that we will have overzealous fans, we will have religious bigots, we will have the Westboro Baptist Church, and we will have the folks that want to abolish anybody that is not gender binary conforming, to hunt them down, to find them at their homes, because Prop 60 will give them the tool that they need to do that. They will give them their legal names, their home addresses, and we will see much violence towards our communities. And I'm so ashamed that in a day and age where we can be proud to celebrate who we are as individuals and the work that we do and the sexuality that we were given or that we celebrate, to be hunted down in such a bigoted way. And I do hope that, I always bring the analogy of that when the wolf comes for the sheep herd, the sheep are not really able to defend themselves unless they all band together, and then they can sort of knock the wolf over the cliff. And I would like to see this as a group effort and as a team effort of us all working together towards the greater picture, and defending the adult film industry so that we can all stand together in the future and work together on achieving the bigger goal of decriminalizing sex work. And I'm not saying this as a token, but I say this as somebody who's worked in the field himself, and I'm very proud of it. And I think that there's no shame in who we are or who we should be. And I think that it's important that we do not let Prop 60 happen, because it'll put us back many, many years in our work. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Ella, could you sort of talk a little bit about why you and APAC are, what is most scary about this for you and the people you work with at APAC?
Well, this is a dangerous Trojan horse initiative couched in rescue rhetoric that is going to cause irreparable harm to the industry. It will throw us to the wolves. It will take vulnerable people and make it easy to access their private information and access them at their homes. Even if some parts of the initiative sound good or sound like something that people think maybe should be put to action in the adult industry, you can't cherry pick the parts of the initiative that sound good from the ones that are absolutely dangerous for us. This will give the people who wish us harm and the people who have unrealistic ideas of their relationships with us access to us personally and our families. And not all of us have the luxury of being able to pick up and move out of state. Some people have families, some people have jobs, some people who have spouses who have jobs that won't allow them to pick up and leave. Some people don't have the finances to just leave the state. I was born here. California is my home. I don't want to have to leave because of a dangerous, messy, sloppy proposition that gets voted in because people don't realize that it's so incredibly harmful. The name is dishonest. It's deceptive. It's intentionally trying to deceive voters into thinking that they're helping us when they are absolutely harming us.
Absolutely. That point about capitalizing off of people's prejudices is really one of the more insidious parts of this initiative. It's hurtful and it's harmful. I too am, California born and bred, and I have no intention of leaving. I couldn't. I wouldn't dream of it. I'll fight this to the end, but at the end of the day, there will be only so much we can do if this would pass. So I think with that, I am happy to open it up to some more questions if folks have any. But otherwise, I think we could probably wrap a little bit. Let me go back to my screen. Let's see. There we go.
Yeah, so I'm not seeing any other questions right here in this minute. I thank you guys all so much for coming. The YouTube video will be available in general, and I'm going to edit it a little bit. And then also edit out some of the major talking points at the end and the most powerful points. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to share a link to the toolkit that you're going to send us under that YouTube video, as well as the Free Speech Coalition and APAC websites, so that people can just, if they're interested and they get in, are interested in this topic and want to get involved, they can.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. So thank you guys all again so much for joining us. This was really powerful. And then what is the timeline? Actually, one last question. What is the timeline for advocacy and work around this? And then I see.
As soon as possible. It's the election is fast approaching. November 8th is the day to vote. I believe mail-in ballots will be going out in the next month or so, fairly soon. So it's go time. It is absolutely go time on this.
Awesome. And then Karen, you just I just saw you pop up on the screen. So do you have something you want to say?
I would like for people to contact Susie. Susie's our great social media manager, and even just following her on Twitter, seeing what's happening. We have some meetings coming up. She keeps everyone informed. So if everyone can start by following Susie, that would be very helpful.
I just put my Twitter handle on there too, and also FSC Army, of course, is a great way to stay involved as well.
And APAC Social, Ella, what's the, or anyone, if you know the Twitter handle for APAC?
Social, got it.
Yay.
Thanks, Susie.
Thanks,
Gotcha.
guys.
So yes, and if you would like to get involved in the fight, please hit me up on Twitter, or you can even email me personally. I'm happy giving that information out. This is a multi-pronged fight, so we really need all hands on deck.
Awesome. And then the one last question is from Mina. Can Mina write up a post about this issue for their site? And I'm assuming the answer is yes, right?
Great. Yeah. I mean, we love that.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, go ahead.
Well, and what's the site? You said write up something for the site. Which site was that? I'm sorry.
Mina, I will. If you can just get in touch with Susie. Okay, Susie's going to email you. Or, I mean, Mina's going to email you, Susie. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you guys all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And talking about this important issue is really appreciated. So I'm going to take it off the broadcast.